engines roaring, highs and lows, we steal the show. Turn the corners, feel the breeze. Oh yeah, in the zone, aim to please. Come on, SAFRL, racing kings. Feel the heartbeat, hear it sing. Speeding crashes, highs and lows. Feel the rush, let it flow. Come on. Monday night, the crowd goes wild. On the edge, every mile. Fast and furious, all in sync. SAFRL can't blink. Feel the tires gripping tight. Swift as lightning, taking flight. Come on. One more lap, one more chance. Victory's just one glance. SAFRL, racing kings. Feel the heartbeat, hear it sing. Speeding crashes, highs and lows. Feel the rush, let it flow. Come on.
Feel the speed, the thrill, high octane drama can't get off fill. Engines roaring loud, heartbeats on the rise. On NFR, see the sparks in our eyes. Racing through the night, chasing every turn. On NFR, adrenaline we burn. Pit stops and fast cars, it's a wild ride. NFR, in our veins we can't hide. NFR, feel the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR, we're flying high. Under the lights, we touch the sky. Yeah. Every lap a story, every driver's dream. On NFR, racing's the supreme. Checker flags waving, champions arise. NFR brings the glory to our eyes. NFR, where the legends are born. Speeding past the limits, engines reborn. In the fast lane, every second counts. NFR, the thrill always mounts. NFR, feel the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR, we're flying high. Under the lights, we touch the sky. NFR with the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR's lane, every second counts. NFR, the thrill always mounts. NFR, feel the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR, we're flying high. Under the lights, we touch the sky. You move to NFR, feel the speed, the speed. You move to NFR.
Mount your engines, feel the heat. Monday night, a chemist's feet. SAFRL, the track's alive. Racing hearts, we just drive. 8 p.m., the crowd ignites. Drama unfolds under lights. Speeding fast, never dive. SAFRL, we thrive. Just drive. SAFRL, feel the
We strive, we strive, we strive. Just drive, just drive. SAFRL, feel alive. Just drive, just drive. Monday night we survive. It's time to go. Feel the speed, let it flow. Racing hearts, watch them glow. Turn it up, start the show. NFR, feel the heat. Fast and fierce, never beats. Engines roar, can't stay off seats. Catch the thrill, it's so sweet. NFR, NFR. Drama high, stars afar. Round the track like a shooting star. Feel the rush, NFR. Lap by lap, watch them spin. Victory's close, who will win? In our heads, the engine's din. NFR, let's begin. NFR, lights are green. Zooming fast, slick machine. Every twist, every scene. Catch the action on your screen. NFR, NFR, yeah. Drama high, stars afar. Round the track like a shooting star. Feel the rush, NFR. Lap by lap, watch them spin. Victory's close, who will win? In our heads, the engine's din. NFR, let's begin. Monday night, feel the vibe. SAFRL, alive, alive. Vintage roar, crowds inside. 8 p.m. electric light. On the edge, they race so fast. Speeding by, won't let it pass. Highs and lows, a roller coaster. Drama here, we're getting closer. Feel the speed, feel the big deal. Monday nights, it's all so real.
Turn on the screen, it's NFR. Feel the rush like a shooting star. The engines roar, the tires scream. Fast as lightning, it's a dream. Speed and drama, every turn on NFR. The rubber burns. Feel the thrill of every bend, where the champions transcend. Feel the power at NFR. Burning tracks, driving far. Where the races never end. NFR, only friend. Like Fernando calls to play on NFR. Every race day, commentary sharp and loud, hyping up the roaring crowd. Feel the power at NFR. Burning tracks, driving far. Where the races never end. NFR, only friend. Not Fernando calls to play on NFR at race day. Commentary sharp and loud, hyping up the roaring crowd. Feel the power at NFR. Burning tracks, driving far. Where the races never end. NFR, only friend. Deaf queen, the top support is seen. In the crowd where speed is keen. NFR, the place to be. Join the race, watch and see.
SAFRL, it's Monday night. Oh yeah. 8 p.m. the cars take flight. Come on. Speed and drama, thrills and chills. Oh, racing fast, chasing thrills. Yeah. Engines roaring, lights aglow. Highs and lows, we steal the show. Oh, turn the corners, feel the breeze. Oh yeah. In the zone, aim to please. Come on. SAFRL, racing kings. Feel the heartbeat, hear it sing. Speeding crashes, highs and lows. Feel the rush, let it flow. Come on. Monday night, the crowd goes wild. On the edge, every mile. Fast and furious, all in sync. SAFRL can't blink. Feel the tires up and tight. Swift as lightning, taking flight. Come on. One more lap, one more chance. Victory's just one glance. SAFRL, racing kings. Feel the heartbeat, hear it sing. Speeding crashes, highs and lows. Feel the rush, let it flow. Come on.
NFR, feel the speed, the thrill. High octane drama can't get off fill. Engines roaring loud, heartbeats on the rise. On NFR, see the sparks in our eyes. Racing through the night, chasing every turn. On NFR, adrenaline we burn. Pit stops and fast cars, it's a wild ride. NFR, in our veins we can't hide. NFR, feel the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR, we're flying high. Under the lights, we touch the sky. Every lap a story, every driver's dream. On NFR, racing's the supreme. Checker flags waving, champions arise. NFR brings the glory to our eyes. NFR, where the legends are born. Speeding past the limits, engines reborn. In the fast lane, every second counts. NFR, the thrill always mounts. NFR, feel the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR, we're flying high. Under the lights, we touch the sky. NFR with the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR's lane, every second counts. NFR, the thrill always mounts. NFR, feel the rush, feel the speed. Formula One dreams, we take the lead. On NFR, we're flying high. Under the lights, we touch the sky. You move to NFR, feel the speed. You move to NFR. Mount your engines, feel the heat. Monday night, a chemist's feet. SAFRL, the track's alive. Racing hearts, we just drive. 8 p.m., the crowd ignites. Drama unfolds under lights. Speeding fast, never dive. SAFRL, we thrive. Just drive. SAFRL, feel alive. Just drive. Monday night, we survive. Rivals clash, engines roar. Every lap, we crave more. Flags wave, stakes sky high. One goal, catch the eye. Tires burning, adrenaline high. One mistake, wave goodbye. Teams unite, souls revive. SAFRL, we strive. Just drive.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to NFR. Welcome back to SAFRL. Season 9, Round 8. We're here in Mexico as we were last night for SKR. Little different this time round. Same situation with the qualifying. Just the 18 minutes short qualifying session as we saw last night. But in the race, it's going to be a long one. Going for the full 100% distance. Of course, it will be the last 100% distance race on the calendar for this season. Just the 14 drivers in the lineup. Just picked that up now in the comment section. Wasn't ignoring it. Just saw it now. We's reporting in the comment section. Rain is expected. Of course, there were times during the Grand Prix last night where things looked a little gloomy, but there was no rain. If we have rain tonight, all the data that would have been collected yesterday will all come down to nothing. Very different race in the rain, very different circuit in the rain. Welcome to Ubuntu. Good luck, guys. Enjoy the race and enjoy the rain. That's the message from Ubuntu. So we are in Q1. There will only be a Q1. So just the short qualifying session to set the field for this 100% distance race in Mexico City. This is the RB of Top Gun. Pretty controversial fight between an RB and a Red Bull yesterday. Not something you see every day. Both of them finishing outside the points. Perez not having the home Grand Prix he would have wanted. Another guy that did not get his best Grand Prix result he would have wanted was Fernando Alonso on his 400th Grand Prix, first car to retire. Don't have any lap times yet, that's why I'm talking rubbish, waiting for the good stuff to come. But already a few drivers all on outlaps, still a few drivers in the pits. Rather all on quick laps, they've completed their outlaps. Andre is the only car on an outlap, then we still have about 5 cars sitting in the pits. That Aston Martin out front, pretty sure I saw him out on track earlier, but he is in the pits. First lap time on the board is a 13.9. Goes the way of Matt, the Haas driver. This will probably be the next one over the line. It is Virus 15.1, Spikes 15.0, 14.9, Triple M. It keeps on changing. Everybody just going a tenth quicker than the last car to go over the line. This is Top Gun in the RB. It's in the middle of that stadium section, which looks very different this year. Of course, they've added very nice ultra modern roof to that stadium, gives it a much more enclosed arena feeling. Top Gun over the line, goes P7, 15.5. Not a bad lap time. It's really all about how close these lap times are. 2 or 3 tenths off your best. Might find yourself 5 or 6 positions down on where you want to be. This is Mr. M, one of the drivers not to have set a lap time yet. There are 5 of them, 4 of them on outlaps. Rather, there are 6 of them. Scott remains in the pits, no lap time next to his name. Matt returns to the pits. It's a 13.9. Much quicker than anything else on the timesheets for now. Next best is a 14.5 by Weeze. You got a 14.9 by Triple M. Let's have a look at some stats on our screen, get an idea of who's doing what. Bring up some tyre information. You can see there's still some cars at the back. Qualifying on the intermediate tyre. Still a lot more lap times to come, with just under 12.5 minutes remaining. Don't expect these to be the final lap times. I expect them to still come down quite a lot. Of course, Liam Lawson was told to personally apologize to Sergio Perez. Some might think it's a bit harsh. Many don't know that the apology wasn't necessarily about the crash. The apology was for the middle finger that Liam Lawson was able to show Sergio that he snuck in there in the broadcast. Another driver looking at a possible fine, Charles Leclerc, being investigated by the FIA. This is a true story, by the way. Charles Leclerc currently being investigated by the FIA for swearing in Thursday's interviews. Prior to the weekend, they do a lot of press on the Thursday, and well, Charles Leclerc dropped an F-bomb. This is Triple M currently in P4, 14.9. Then he's got a lot of cars behind him that are really, really close to him, so he's not comfortable with that lap time. He needs to find something more. Any of those cars behind him that find a tenth and a half will be able to jump him. Spikes 15.0, Pantry Star 15.1, Virus 15.1, all of those drivers just within a tenth and a half away from Triple M, so he does need to find an improvement. Weeze and Ladmine, that's a new name. They're very close together, 14.5, 14.6, that's the difference between 2 and 3. But the difference to P1 is quite a difference indeed. Matt leads the way still, 13.9, quickest we've seen. Further down in the order we have Virus in the second Red Bull, his teammate up in P4. This is Andres, 15.7, looking for something a little better, and because this field is so tight, doesn't need to find much. He could elevate himself up this field pretty quickly. Boinkies returning to the pits, also returning to the name Boinkies. I think he was Ronald briefly. Mr. Rem, the other Ferrari, both Ferraris at the rear of the field. This Ferrari on a set of intermediate tyres. He's actually done a few laps on those intermediate tyres, so don't expect any magical lap times from him while he's doing that. This is another driver on the intermediate tyre, Skull, currently in P13. Maybe there is rain coming in the race. He's not going to get used to the intermediate tyre like this, because this is not how it's designed to be used. It just overheats on a dry circuit. It's meant for water, and when it doesn't come into contact with water for quite some time, heats up and becomes quite useless to the driver. This is the provisional pole sitter with a 13.9. Matt, the only driver to have achieved a 13 on the evening. Not sure if we saw 13 last night. Was it a 14.0 or did we get into the 13s? Correct me in the comment section, I'm not quite sure. Too many lap times in my mind. So it's Matt, quickest man in the field. it stays. Has he gone quicker? Is he charging up? I can't tell. Where's that battery going? I think he's had that lap, so he hasn't been able to improve. Stays at a 13.9. This is Wheeze. Is he going to be able to get a little closer? I was talking about getting a little closer. That's a little bit more than closer. He's gone past Matt. Comes the second car into the 13s, and look how close it is. Just 400ths of a second covering the front row, both of them on a 13.9. Next best is a 14.6. That's Ladmine. That's the driver in the Aston Martin that we're looking at. Pantry Star, he's in the pit lane. In fact, he's returning to his garage. Virus in the garage. Triple M on an outlap. So Spikes, one of the two RBs. He's in P7 with a 15.0. Then his teammate just behind him, P8, 15.3. Got Andres in the second of the Red Bulls. All four of those Red Bull owned cars running line astern, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And you've got Boinkies, P10 in the first of the Ferraris, Andre in the second McLaren, P11 sitting in the pits, Mr. M, P12, Skull in the pits. I believe he's going to put on a set of soft tyres. Of course, he's been on the intermediate, coasting around the circuit. Now he will have a go on the soft tyre, and that lap time should improve by quite some bit. Of course, 120 at the moment. Quiet time on the racetrack. 5 minutes remaining. Drivers returning to the pits, preparing for that final run. Remember, there's no more qualifying after this, just the short qualifying session. So this does determine the field, so you've got no second opportunities. If you don't get this session right, well, that's where you're going to start the race. How many drivers will have anticipated or would have at least seen the rain? Sometimes the driver doesn't go into that page. If you had seen the rain, will you have chosen a different setup? Of course, we don't know much more than that. We just know that rain is expected. It could be in the latter stages of the race, it could be at the race start, or it could be throughout. And that could mean very different things for the racing. So we're going to have to wait and see when that rain comes, and if it comes. This is Ladmine. We've been following him. He comes into the pits. He's currently in P3. Lots of drivers in the pits, so we're looking for some action. We find some. It's Andres. He's about to go over the line. That battery's pretty depleted, and he has improved pretty nicely up into P5. It's a 14.8. Puts himself in the mix. And look at those lap times in the middle. Got a 14.6, a 14.7, a 14, a pair of 14.8s, 14.9 and a 15.0. Absolutely nothing in it between all of these drivers. So close. And then you've got these two out front. Half a second clearing the field. Both of them on 13.9s. One of them is Wheeze, one of them is Matt. They're not teammates. One is in a Mercedes, one is in a horse. So if they're able to translate that into race pace, you can expect some very, very close racing. Of course, when they're teammates, there's always that little bit of extra space in the passes and the overtaking, that little bit of extra respect, unless the championship's on the line. And you've got two drivers who are definitely not teammates but matching each other in pace. The prospects for the race are always exciting. Of course, just the 14 runners in the field. No lap time from Skull just yet. He has come into the pits, put on a set of soft tyres, but remains in the pits. May just be looking for a bit of space on the racetrack. Last thing you want is for that final run to be impeded. We do have a purple sector. It's a purple sector for Wheeze. What sector is it? It's sector 2. He heads off into the stadium section. Is he able to hold the rest of the lap together and take this lap beyond a 13.9 and lower into the 13s? Yes, he does. It's a 13.6. And that moves the goalpost, throws the challenge down to Matt. We were matching not so long ago. I just took another 3/10 out of you. Let's see what you got. Matt is out on track and he's just started a quick lap, so he's going to be looking to respond. A lot of that battery's already gone by the time he gets to turn 1, but that's because of the length of the straight. It's almost 800 meters from the start finish line to turn 1. Can use up so much of your battery. Then the drivers conserve a little bit more in these twisty bits. Got to make the battery last the entire way. Matt's got to find a lot of time here. 13.9 is already a very quick quality lap. When you have to go find another 3/10, well, he's found a 10th in sector 2, so he is quicker. Is he going to be quick enough? It's all going to come down to this final bit of the circuit. Stadium section, so crucial. He's going to go over the line and let's see what he can come up with. He does improve, but not quite enough. It's a 13. It's a 13.8. Thought it was a 13.6 for a second, but it is a 13.8. So Wee's faster than the rest of the field by 0.2 of a second. Spikes P3 with a 14.2. We have Lad Mine, he's been pushed down into P4, 14.6. Gonna have to find something a little better if he wants to get that position back. Then Pantry Star P5. Who else is out on a lap? Of course we have Skull. We haven't seen a lap from him on dry tires. So this should be a improvement. Not only should it be an improvement, it should be a really, really big improvement. 20.9, that was the best lap time he was able to come up with, but that was on the intermediate tyre. So we follow him in sector 2. This is the twisty bit. See, not as flowing as the S's you'll find in Kota. A little bit tighter, a little bit more tricky. In the stadium section, one of the unique parts of this race circuit, driving through what was previously a baseball stadium. Of course, the new baseball stadium just across the road now. Skull sets a lap time of 15.3. Would have hoped for something a little more, but it's good enough for P10. Let's see where Pantry Star is out on track. Well, that lap time is not going to be any quicker. You can see that by sector 1 already. Let's go to Andres. He peels off into the pits, so no improvement there. The other Red Bull, either the internet's glitching or he looks a little out of shape. May have just been the internet joined him at the wrong time. Triple, nicely done, up into P4. A late improvement, probably the only real late improvement. Nicely done for Triple M. Puts one of the Red Bulls on the second row. But as like Perez, he has an RB in front of him. I'm sorry, I had to throw that in. Of course, now we just await those official results. Remember, there's going to be no break. We're going to go straight into the race. No real time for a break. It's going to be a late one. Let's get through these results real quick. Wheeze takes pole position. Matt got close, but not close enough. P2. Then they're followed by Spikes, Triple M, Pantry Star, Ladmine, Andres, Virus, Top Gun, Skull, Boinkies, Andre, Mr. M. And I don't have to scroll down because there's just 14 Scott will line up at the rear of the field with no lap time. Of course, now remember it's a 100% race, so I say it's going to be a long one this evening, and that might make it feel a lot longer. Of course, doesn't just make it feel a lot longer, it makes it a lot longer. These guys lap a lot slower in the rain. So when you do get a 100% race mixed in with some rain, turns out to be a pretty long evening. Of course, the drivers are going to have a lot more information than I do. I can just see the rain falling on our screen, but that's about as much information as I have. Will this rain let up in 5 laps, 10 laps, 50% of the race, or will it continue? Of course, it could dry up. It could also get worse. At the moment, doesn't look like wet weather tires. Looks like everyone will probably start on the intermediate. But as for what the weather's going to do for the rest of the evening, I really don't know. And there we go. We're not going to be waiting much longer. So it's Wheeze from Matt. That's the front row. Definitely see the raindrops, but how hard is it really raining? Let's just have a look at the tires. It's obviously not raining that hard. Let's just go on board. There definitely are raindrops falling. Does that suggest that the rain is going away pretty early on? Not sure, but the entire field has chosen to start on a set of medium tires when there is clearly raindrops falling. As I say, not very hard, but if they do get worse, you're going to get a very, very busy pit lane early on. Last thing we want to see is any retirements this evening. Oh goodness, look at that, a 3-stop predicted. I never know with the pit stop strategies or potential pit stop strategies this game throws at you in the beginning of the race. You can never trust them too much. And either my game is having some sort of glitch, or everyone is just hoping that this rain is going to go away. Not even one driver in the lineup choosing the medium compound. It looks pretty slippery. Wee's trying to get some tire temperature. That isn't the usual weave we see. Doing a bit of sliding, even gets offline there. That's obviously the extra bit of tarmac that saved Charles Leclerc yesterday. How he was able to keep that car out of the wall was pretty impressive. Of course, now just wait for the 5 red lights to begin proceedings. 100% lap around this very unique and challenging circuit. There are the 5 red lights, and when they disappear, you know what happens next. We're underway. It's Wheeze versus Matt. It's a long run down to turn 1. One of the longest runs down to turn 1 you're going to find on the calendar. Matt up the inside at first. I thought he was just going to show him a wing, but he definitely went for it. And there's contact, and there's more contact. There's cars on the inside, they're on the grass. There's not an Alpine, that's an RB. Running wide on the outside, a couple of cars ghosting at the rear. So a messy first sequence of corners. And one of the victory contenders immediately handicapped in this race. He's down to P6. That is Wheeze. So how quick he was in qualifying. Well, now he's going to have to race his way through the midfield. Of course, we will soon find out if DRS is active or not. Which takes a couple of laps just for DRS to become available, but if the track is deemed too wet, it will not become available. We're staying on board with some of these drivers because we just want to keep our eyes on the raindrops, but as you can see from the broadcast view, you can almost not see any rain. Matt completes the first lap of the race, leading the way. We're looking at a battle between Wies and Andres. It's Mercedes versus Red Bull, two manufacturers that have gone up against each other many times in the past. Matt's still out front, hasn't shaken off that DRS zone. Let's keep our eyes now on Triple. He's just gone quicker than Matt in Sector 1. So he's going to be really close, but does he have DRS? That is the question. Because if the track is deemed wet, or damp rather, then DRS disappears for safety reasons. DRS is there, you can see it, confirmation. His rear wing opens up, but now he's getting dangerously close. Falling out of that DRS just over the 1 second mark, and if he doesn't close it up by the time he gets to the main straight, he's not going to get that little boost of the rear wing. First thing that happens is the driver starts to jump on that battery a little bit more because he's trying to get back within a second. Then he gets within the second, he has no battery left to stay there. Still nobody visiting the pits, we still see rain out on circuit. Everybody seems to be handling things quite well for now. It's definitely something I would have considered if I was sitting on the grid. Do I go for inters? Do I go for dries? But it seems like nobody in this field even gave it a thought. Virus seems to have had some damage on the car, so he's made a pit stop and he's come out on track with another set of mediums. So definitely nobody worried about this rain getting any worse for now. The cars do look a bit slippery, but I'm presuming that this was done with the anticipation of the track improving relatively soon. Despite that messy first sequence of corners, we still do have all our drivers. Started with just 14. I think some drivers hiding away from the 100% distance, and if they're watching, they're probably quite happy that they did. That is a sliding Mercedes, just trying to keep it stable. Somehow he's still making up positions. There's a Haas on the inside going very slowly. That was Matt. Just giving up the position there, I'm not quite sure. Maybe he just couldn't get any traction. He was on the inside of the circuit. We flew past him down the straight. And now we have a very different leader at the front. Triple M for Red Bull in P1. Healthy gap at this stage of the race. 2.6 seconds. Spikes in P2 with an RB. We've got the Mercedes P3, Matt P4. Of course, those two started on the front row, class of the field in qualifying, a step above the rest. Well, Wies had his misfortunes in turn 3, not quite sure what happened to Matt. They then traded places again and find themselves in 3 and 4. Of course, those drivers showed a lot of pace in qualifying. If they're able to do that now, they should be able to catch up to the leaders again and cancel out those mistakes of the early laps. Still Triple M continuing, and that is the quickest lap, so that suggests to me that the track is improving. not getting any worse. If the track was getting any worse, we wouldn't be seeing any purples. Now lad mine, he goes quickest. Does this mean the track is getting better and better? Means the track will slowly come to these tyres. As less water falls on the circuit, these tyres will gradually build up to the temperature they're supposed to be at. These cars will come alive. Hasn't been a lot of rain, but I'm still sure a lot of these drivers have been driving around on their toes. I've seen a lot of sliding around. Fantastic to see that everybody... Ooh, I almost said something and then I saw the slide. There we go, we're in a safer part of the race circuit. Let me just wait till he's in the slowest part of the circuit. There we go. Everybody holding it together for now. Still the 14 that started all out on circuit. Virus quite some way behind the rest of the field. It's because he made a very early pit stop. For what I can only imagine was damage, because that was on lap 2, very early days. Triple M sets the quickest lap of the race. Wheeze sets the quickest lap of the race from P3. That Mercedes is driving angry. Started at the front of the field. Got pushed down very early on due to an incident. P6 or 7, I believe it was. Made his way back through the field up into P3, and now he's got some clean air and he's absolutely throwing everything at it. It's not going to be clean air for much longer, is it? Because he's just broken into DRS. Briefly broke into DRS and now he's fallen back out of it. But that is going to shortly be a DRS battle, because Weeze definitely has a pace advantage. On spikes up the road from him. Welcome, Cheddar. Good to have you on the stream. Why are you not on the racetrack? A lot of drivers running away from the 100% format. So I can tell you all that for the remainder of this SAFRL Season 9, there will be no more 100% races. All following races will be the short quali 50% race. The format we're all a little bit more used to. And look at the purples. Said earlier on the purples were suggesting the track is getting better. Well, now you can't see any raindrops falling. Absolutely nothing. Looks like a dry circuit. I'd still take a lap or two for the track to become optimal. But things are only going to get better from now. Those lap times are going to come down and down and down. Of course the track improves, but the drivers also regain their confidence. It's always a bit tricky when the track is wet, but you're not quite sure how wet it is. You don't really know where the limit is. You don't want to go over the limit, because that could be the end of your race. So you've got to hold things together, and then as the track starts to dry up, just start to show a little bit of bravery, and that was almost a little bit too much bravery. Triple M getting it sideways into the S's, holds it together very, very nicely. Back into the stadium section. Of course, this circuit disappeared from our F1 calendar for a pretty long time. Really made its return because of the popularity of Sergio Perez. Of course, named the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, which basically means the Rodriguez brothers racing circuit. It's named after those two drivers. Track opened in 1962 and had its first ever Mexican Grand Prix later that year. Well, Ricardo Rodriguez lost his life at that Grand Prix, and then 9 years later his brother Pedro lost his life too at the wheel of an F1 car. It's a circuit named after two legendary Mexican siblings who raced F1 in the 60s. Of course, that first race that took the life of Ricardo Rodriguez, that was not a championship sanctioned event. So back then you had a pretty big calendar. Some of the races were non-championship events, some of them were, because usually the tracks that were a little further away, they'd be considered non-championship events. For the smaller teams who couldn't afford to fly out, keep the championship events a little closer to Europe. Of course, the South African Grand Prix was a non-championship event, I believe, for its first 3 or 4 iterations. Triple M leads the way. Wheeze 2.7 seconds. We saw he was getting closer and closer to Spikes. Well, he's gotten past Spikes, and he's made it look pretty easy. He's already opened the gap up to 9/10 of a second, so looking to go beyond DRS. Then he can really just get after his opponent out front. No idea why the phone is going crazy. All the messages come through at the same time. Triple M leads the way. Wheeze P2. Spike sets the fastest lap. That's the man in P3. That's probably because he's getting DRS and a little bit of drag from a very quick driver just up the road from him. Wheeze P2, Spikes P3, gets really close. Not close enough to make any sort of a lunge. Would have to be something pretty crazy. Would have to be something pretty Max Verstappen. Spikes thinks better of it. Knows it's an incredibly long race. Of course, it would be 35 or 36 laps if we were doing our normal format. Doing the 100% format for the final time this season, and that means we've got 71 laps as a race distance. They've done 10 of them, and they were tricky. It was rain falling, everyone was on the dry tyre in anticipation of that rain disappearing. It has since disappeared. We've been able to hold on to all 14 of our drivers. There's still 61 laps to go. Will the rain return? Will things continue to clear up and we get a clear blue sky? All will be revealed. Triple M for the time being, 1.7 seconds is the lead. The last time we looked at it was 2.7 seconds. So Wheeze, well, he's found an extra second in the last lap, closing that gap to P1 really quickly. Of course, he was at the front right at the start, had some bad luck. Of course, Matt also having some bad luck. Those cars ran line astern in P3 and 4. Since then, Wheeze has made up a position. Matt has pretty much stayed right where he was. He's in P4, hasn't really made up a lot of time on Spikes, and he's starting to come under pressure from Landmine. So I wonder if Matt is carrying any damage. Let's just have another look at that horse. Nothing we can see from the TV pod. Let's have a look at the broadcast cam. Still appears to have all his end plates. Doesn't have the pace he was showing at the beginning of the race. Triple M out front, the gap 1.3 seconds. It's come down another 4/10. Gap is coming down all the time, and if Triple M is listening to the stream in the background, he's probably cursing me. Stop saying these lap times. Stop giving these lap differences. I know what they are. It's probably sounding like Kimmy right now. Yes, I know. So Triple M leads the way from Wheeze, then Spikes, then Matt. Okay, Matt just not making any progress. 3.9 seconds was the difference. Now it's 4.1, so he's actually just going a little backwards. Landmine all over the back of that horse, looking to get himself up into P4 and a possible podium contention. Of course, those top 3 just starting to get a little bit too far down the road. So if Landmine feels trapped behind Matt, needs to get past pretty quickly. He feels he's faster than that horse in front of him. Needs to clear that horse. Every lap, every corner he sits behind him, he's just missing out. Letting those top three get further and further down the road. You can see now the gap between the top three and Matt. It's 4.4 seconds, getting bigger every lap. And that's why we see the Aston Martin of Leerdmine pretty desperate to make up that position. Really on the rear diffuser of the horse just ahead of him. And surely this is going to be his best opportunity. They're so close as they come out of the final corner. He's going to get that DRS boost, and if he's got any battery, he's going to use all of it. They go side by side. It's such a long straight. He should be there long before he needs to. And he is. He makes the position long before even the braking point. Goes into turn 1, P4. Comes out of that sequence of corners, holding on to P4. He'll be happy with that. Gap out front between him and the top three, rather, 3.7 seconds. That gap was getting bigger and bigger, but now Leerdmine will have some free air in front of him. He has shown that he's got extreme pace. He's got a little bit of work to do before he can catch up to Spikes. That's the final podium position. Spike's doing a good job at the moment, holding on to the Red Bull in front of him. Triple M still holding on to Wheeze, keeping it within DRS range. They are pretty close together. That gap, 0.4 of a second, will be interesting now when we get to the main straight. Great helicopter view of the leading pack. Don't think he's going to be close enough this time round. When you get to that straight, you want to be around 3-4 tenths behind, or 6 tenths behind. Might just be a little bit too much. And there we go, it is a little bit too much. To take a lunge. Of course, with a lunge, the possibility is there. The problem is, the driver you're trying to perform that lunge on needs to be very accepting of what you're doing. If he chooses to defend, well, going to have a Red Bull off track. I've seen that before. Wheeze, Triple M, Spikes, Leerdmine. As we said, he now had some free air and he could just get out there. Gap's 3.7 seconds. It's still 3.7 seconds. So in that one lap, since he got past Matt, he has not been able to make up any more time. The second Red Bull down in P6. He's fallen adrift from the top 5. He's got Top Gun just behind him. So the RBs and the Red Bulls sticking close together. Got Red Bull RB, P2, P3, Red Bull RB, P6, P7. We've got the first of the two Ferraris and the only one in the points. That's Boinkies. Just behind him, Andre racing hard. Currently in the points, but he'd love to double those points. Go up into P8, take a few more. He's got DRS. You can see the rear wing opening. He's going to go side by side with the Ferrari. Look at that for a view. Gets past him cleanly into turn 1. Just got to make sure you get it stopped. Of course, the natural line turning into that corner is to go from the outside to the inside. So when you're making an overtake on the inside, got to keep it in mind. Got to make sure you're still able to make the corner. One thing to make that overtake, got to make sure to get the car stopped on the other side. Otherwise it's all for nothing. Pantry Star, that is the final car in the points. P10. Mr. Rem, a little further down the road in P11. If he wants to get into the points, it's going to be quite the job. Gap already opening up. Scott, P12. Remember, he started in P14, so he has made up a couple of positions. Virus 13 and the second McLaren, not having a good time of it so far. We've got Skull, it's right at the rear. Something's gone wrong there, has it? Or is that just a natural pit stop, one he intended to make? Just seems out of sequence with everyone else around him. So Skull has made a pit stop, gotten rid of that first set of tyres, and he is at the rear of the field. He will have the advantage of fresh rubber and clean air, so he can just throw the laps in now, try and gain some sort of advantage before everybody else pits. But as you can see, no one pit on that last lap. Let's have a look. Where is your leader? He's approaching the stadium section. Stay with the leader to see if he responds in any way. If he too makes a pit stop, when does that pit window open? Of course, we're so used to commentating on the 50% races. You've got to remember, a lot of these numbers, they simply double. So if you're expecting a set of mediums to do 12 laps around the circuit, well, you've got to remember they could do 24 laps around the circuit. Everything doubles, not just the distance of the race, otherwise these guys would be using 4 or 5 sets of tyres for a 100% race, and that would be pretty disastrous. So Wheeze still out front, 2 seconds is the gap, so he's shaken off the cars behind. Triple M has actually lost the position to Spikes. It was in P2, but now the RB has passed him. The junior team gets past the senior team. Of course, some controversy between those two teams. Lawson being told to apologise, as I mentioned earlier on, for his little finger gesture while passing Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez coming out in the Mexican media and saying that Lawson could do with learning some respect. Those are two drivers vying for the same seat, vying for this seat. The navy blue Red Bull. Got all sorts of Red Bulls. We've got white Red Bulls, we've got navy Red Bulls. Not one of them is leading the race. That's a Mercedes out front. Wee's looking awfully comfortable. The gap was 2 seconds. It's now 2.4 on the brink of 2.5. So the gap just increasing lap by lap, sector by sector, opening up the field. We haven't had any stoppages in the race, and well, aren't we all really glad about that? Of course, that would just extend the night a little bit longer. Already so difficult for the drivers. A lot of these drivers very, very experienced in the 50% format. When it comes to the 100% format, I can guarantee you they haven't done 20% as much as they've done in the 50% format. So sometimes in that second half of the race, mine can just start to drift. And in a sport like this, even if it drifts for the slightest moment, if you're on the wrong part of the race circuit when it happens, you're pretty much done for. At the rear of the field, we have Skull. Remember, he made that pit stop I was speaking about not so long ago. He made a pit stop out of sequence with everybody else. He was 10 seconds adrift from the rest of the field. Has been able to use that new rubber, use that clean air, because he's since closed that 10-second gap down to 6.8 seconds. He's just running out of sync with everybody else, and he does have a penalty next to his name. Your leader is still the Mercedes, still have Spikes in P2. Nothing's changed there. Spikes hasn't been able to shake off Triple M, so he's still under heavy pressure. He still needs to keep his eyes on the mirrors. He'd love to concentrate on that Mercedes up the road, concentrate on how he's going to catch him What is he going to do? He needs to bring that gap down, but he can't concentrate on the Mercedes up the road. He's just behind him. He's got a Red Bull. Red Bull of Triple M. He's not awfully close right now, but he's close enough to be within DRS. Look how close he gets. Late on the brakes. So late on the brakes. Even look to lock up there on the right hand side. Didn't want to run into your leader. In fact, Triple M late on the brakes. Weeze nowhere near those two. 3.1 seconds. Every time we look at it, it's gone up 4 or 5 tenths. So Weeze sitting comfortable now. As for the man who was able to match him in qualifying, that pace just hasn't translated. I said in qualifying that those two were so close together that if the pace translated into race pace, we were going to get a really tough battle. Unfortunately, that has not translated. Seems like Matt not able to match that pace. Did seem to have the pace in the early stages. Very early stages, of course. We've got demoted just in turn 1. And then Matt, about a lap and a half later, also had misfortunes of his own. Both on recovery drives. What a recovery drive it's been for Weeze. He's out front by 3 seconds now. I think he did lose about 4 tenths in fact, so I wonder if Weeze just made a small error. So easy to do. Long race to go. 50 laps to go. Lap 21 of 71. Triple M P3, Matt still in P4. Ladmine still close behind that horse, still putting Matt under pressure. Matt holding on to that P4, defending it for quite some time now with success. Then you got Top Gun in the second RB. There's not much he can do. He's in P6 and he's fallen adrift from the top 5. Almost 13 seconds between the top 5 and the rest of the field. Then Pantry Star in one of 2 Alpines. He's in P7. Then Andre P8. Solid race for Andre so far. Remember, the mistakes usually come towards the end of the race when we have these 100% distance races, so all you need to do is make sure you stay out of that penalties column and have a consistent race to the end. Don't make any mistakes. To win the race, you usually have to be the quickest man on track. Sometimes quickest drivers on track get all sorts of penalties and cancel out that advantage they gained by being so quick. And it means sometimes that some of the midfield runners find themselves on the podium and in more extreme cases go on to win a race. We do have 4 drivers in the penalties column already. Just bring up those penalties to see if there's anything extreme. And as I say that, I do spot something pretty extreme. We'll get to it now. So Triple M in P3. He's got a 3-second penalty. That's the Red Bull. Then Top Gun in the RB. He's got 6 seconds worth of penalties. That's the sort of thing that can really hurt you at the end of the race. If there's any sort of late safety car like we had last night. We had a late safety car. Just got a 6-lap sprint at the end. Having those sort of penalties next to your name could destroy your race. Another driver with 6 seconds worth of penalties is Ladmine down in P8. He's already lower down in the field than he'd like to be, and then he's got those penalties next to his name. But then the driver with the most is the driver at the rear of the field. Seems like he's no longer in control of that car, or is he? Not quite sure what is going on there. I think that car might be... Surely not. Yes, it is. I think Skull is being lapped. So I think Skull is in control of that car. It's just ghosting so that the quicker cars can go through. Of course, that is something we switch on in the game. If you find yourself in a situation where you have to lap a car, that car will ghost relative to you, meaning you can simply drive through it. There will be no contact, there will be no damage, there will be no slowing down for either driver. Of course, when you switch that feature off, it can make things quite complicated for drivers coming through the field. Sometimes it's not necessarily that someone is holding you up, it's just that you caught them on the wrong part of the race circuit. Wheeze has come into the pits, that was your leader. He's come in and had a change of tyres, comes out on another set of mediums. That first set of mediums took him 23 laps, so if he repeats the feat, should take him up to lap 46. Then I suppose the guys are going to get on hards and take it to the end. Track seems pretty heavy on the tyres. Triple leads the way, Spikes P2. Remember, Wheeze was leading, but he has since made a pit stop. He's sitting pretty in P3 with some clean air ahead of him, so doesn't have to worry about coming through the field, losing time in the process. He's got the racetrack to himself and he's got brand new tyres. Remember the last time he had brand new medium tyres, he was on a damp race circuit, so he wasn't able to get the most out of them. So this time around he'll be enjoying those fresh set of mediums, enjoying the pace, enjoying the added grip. Spikes comes into, rather he doesn't, Triple M comes into the pits. Spikes stays out on track, takes the lead of the race. Always a good feeling to lead the race. Not the best feeling when you think, I've got to put myself in a lap or two. Spikes from Wheeze. Remember, Spikes needs to make that pit stop, so that gap 14 seconds as we currently see it actually just pops to 13.9. We've got a caution. Hopefully that's all it will be. A safety car right in the middle of the pit window could really mix things up, but we're not going to get one. Seems like that yellow has disappeared and everybody on the track map does appear to be moving, so no retirement, no stoppage, no safety car. Fantastic, let's keep going. Lap 25 of 71. Spikes still out front, but that gap is falling and it's falling quickly. Remember, the gap was around 15 seconds, came down to 14 seconds, now it's 12.5 seconds. So even though Wheeze has already made that pit stop, Spike's out there in the lead. He's dropping time with every single lap he spends out there. Has he chosen to come into the pits just yet? No. Stays out for another lap. All the while that gap continues to tumble. 11.7 seconds. I'm pretty sure Wheeze will have it down in the single digits by the end of this lap. Ladmine, quickest man out on track, 17.0. And that is the benefit of the new tyres. Exactly the same compound, medium tyres. That's the difference between a new set and an old set. Skull misbehaving, picking up another 3-second penalty. You'll have a race where everyone around you picks up penalties and somehow miraculously you get to the end of the race without picking up so much as a warning. Next time round, you're the driver with 9 seconds next to your name. You have no idea how it happened or why it happened, but it usually starts with the first one being a mistake, and then from there frustration follows and causes more. We do now have a safety car in the first DNF. It's the driver we just mentioned, a driver that I hope will join us in the comments section pretty early on. That is a retirement for Skull. We're down to 13 drivers, and the man that just had crippling penalties next to his name has decided to take no further part. I don't think he retired in the pits. I think that was an incident, because it has obviously triggered the safety car. When the guys come in and retire in the pits, we get a brief yellow flag for some reason, and then it's all over. something has triggered that safety car, so Skull should be in the comment section pretty soon. He'll be able to tell me what happened there. Was it a crash? What this does do is it takes a race that was starting to get a little boring. Gaps were starting to form. There weren't that many battles left on track. We were all waiting to see who was going to come out where after that first pit window. Well, this safety car changes everything. Of course, some of the cars would have already pit before the safety car. Some of the cars would have been stretching the tires a little bit more and found the safety car at a perfect time. So now you're going to have scattered strategies around the field when everybody started. The entire field started on the medium compound, suggesting everybody had pretty much the same idea, but that's not always how the race goes. Sometimes a safety car comes in, goes out rather, and you have to come in, you have to look at the race situation. Sometimes staying on that initial strategy is not optimal. You have to change things from the cockpit, quick thinking. I think the safety car will stay out. We have a couple of cars right at the rear of the field. I think that is a McLaren right at the rear, is it? Oh, in fact, there's a Haas behind that McLaren, so there's a Haas still approaching the beginning of Sector 2, while these guys are a little further up the road. Almost a lap up the road. Of course, great thing about the safety car is that it brings this field back together, so even if you're at the rear of the field, you catch up to the rest of the queue, and then anything can happen from that point. Unfortunately, if you've been having a bad race, like Skull was having earlier on, you could find yourself in a situation where you're one lap behind. If that safety car comes out, you find yourself somewhere in the queue, but a lap behind. You simply have to sit in that position till the restart, and when the restart comes, there's not much you can do because you're going to be swamped with blue flags. So it's going to be Wheeze, then Landmine. So you can see how that order has changed, and that's because of the safety car. Those guys made the pit stop just before the safety car came in. Then the rest of the field would have responded. So now we've got a Mercedes followed by an Aston Martin. At least the Mercedes-Benz powered Aston Martin. There's nothing Aston Martin built in that car. Still waiting to get things back underway. Obviously we lost Skull a little earlier on, triggering this safety car that you're watching right now. We go over the line one more time. I think this time around that McLaren at the back and the Haas right at the rear, they will catch the field, and we should be underway at the start of the next lap. Even if you've mastered qualifying, if you've mastered the first stint of the race, you've done everything right up until this point, everything can go wrong at a restart. We saw how messy the first sequence of corners were at the start of the race. They're going to want to get things a little bit neater this time around. Of course, just 13 cars remaining. We don't want to lose any more than that. Lost the one already. At that restart, everyone's just so close together. Your opponent that may have disappeared down the road earlier on in the race to your frustration might now be very much within your grasp, in your view. Just causes drivers to go for that late lunge, that little bit of extra risk. See, everybody's so close together. Instead of making up one position, you could make up 2 or 3 in the space of a lap. Sometimes you get a bit greedy. Sometimes you get a bit greedy. You lose an end plate. And that's the end of that. Very, very slow in the stadium section. Just backing up that field. Now it's going to be really interesting to see when does the leader go. Seems like the leader has gone, has he? There we go. Now he goes. And it's just so difficult. It's so difficult for the driver in P2 just to judge. Sometimes they give a bit of an acceleration. You think, right, here we go. Then they tap off and you think, oh damn, I can't overtake. You have to tap off too. Things can just get messy. The only one who really knows what's going on is the man out front. Of course, he decides when the race gets going again, and there can be no overtaking until the start finish line. One thing good we can report is it looks like all the cars are through turns 1, 2 and 3. So no repeat of the dramas we saw at the start of the race. It's lap 30. So we're starting to approach halfway distance, not quite there yet. Boinkies, a man who very seldomly we used to see in the penalties column, becoming more of a regular in the penalties column of late. I thought it was the name changed to Ronald. Apparently it wasn't. Doesn't need to feel too bad about it, because the man in P3 has also just picked up a penalty. I think this could be one of those messy races where almost all of the field has some sort of penalty or multiples of them. DRS has been enabled. Of course, comes back online 1 lap after the safety car has come back into the pits. Weeze will be happy that by the time that DRS became available, he had already broken DRS to landmine. The gap was 1.4 seconds. Remember what I always say, that driver ahead of you has a 2, 3 or even a 4/10th advantage of you every single lap. If you're able to stay within his DRS, the fact that he tows you around and gives you that boost down the straight, you can effectively cancel out that extra 3 or 4/10ths advantage he has over you. He just tows you around the circuit, but the moment you fall out of DRS, that difference in lap time becomes evident and your rival disappears down the road. Matt, obviously one of the contenders for a race victory in the early stages, then had some misfortunes, fell down to P4, stayed there for quite some time, then his race just got a little stale, stayed in P4, wasn't really making up much time on the drivers ahead of them. That safety car might have just brought some new life to his race. Of course, now he's in P3 and he has a glance towards the inside of the Aston Martin, but doesn't want to do anything crazy. He's already been at the front and he's already been knocked into the midfield, and he doesn't want to do it again. This time wants to get in the front, have a proper fight with Weeze, the man he was planning on fighting at the beginning of the race, but that was very short-lived. That battle may reignite in a few corners or a few laps from now. Of course, if Matt does have the pace that we saw in qualifying, he can get really close to Weeze, if not match him. The problem for him is he's outside of DRS, so matching that driver in front of you is not going to be enough. That lap time will simply stay outside of DRS. You need to be quicker than the man in front of you. Does Matt have enough in his pocket to be a little quicker than Weeze? At the moment, Weeze has the advantage of the medium compound. Matt on a very similarly aged hard compound, so those mediums will go off first. The lap times will start coming to Matt and that gap will start to close. But of course first Matt needs to clear the Aston Martin before he can worry about the Mercedes up the road. And this time round he's going to go side by side. And surely Yes, he does. Goes up into P2. Not too much of a defense from Ladmine. He accepted his position. We got a second retirement, do we? We have a caution flashing on our screen. Hopefully it doesn't turn into anything more. No evidence of it turning into anything more. It's disappeared. But we've lost a Ferrari. Boinkies. No longer in this race. Didn't even get to see halfway distance. So even if it was a 50% race, we would have lost those two cars. How many more will we lose? Wee's out front, 2 seconds is the gap. Now Matt finally has that free air. Can see his opponent up the road. It's time for a rematch. Of course, the initial matchup didn't go well. Both drivers landed up in the midfield with what appeared to be separate incidents. First incident definitely looked like contact between Weeze and Matt. Weeze came off second best, went down to P6. Then, just a few laps later, we found Matt going slowly next to the pit wall. Weeze was able to get past him. Then Matt simply didn't get towed around. But that safety car has brought his race back to life. The gap at the moment going in the wrong direction. Had the gap at 2 seconds. Weeze has responded. 2.4 seconds is now the gap. Remember, Matt also has a penalty next to his name. So Weeze in an incredibly strong position. Just needs to stay out of those penalties. Stay where he is. Doesn't need to take any more risks. But of course, that is not the mind of a racing driver. You want to go quicker. You want to set the purple lap. Want to raise the eyebrows of everybody else in the field. Telling a racing driver to take it easy is simply not in his nature. This is Top Gun. Rather, that is Top Gun. What a mess. What a flurry of cars. That's a McLaren, a Red Bull, an RB all going side by side. Red Bull, the RB rather, getting slightly out of shape. That is Andre, Andres and Top Gun. For the moment, Andre leads that field. Came out on top of that messy situation. We just saw cars all over the track. Luckily, none of them got damaged. Just a bit of a slide for the RB. But Andre leading this field. I know how he'd love to break DRS and get rid of them, but a lot of work to do before he can do that. Just 0.2 of a second. We're looking back from the McLaren. Of course, a lot of times in the past we've seen Andre teammate with Skull. Not tonight. Skull is out of the race. He was the first of the 2 retirements and the only one that triggered a safety car. This is Andre, and this is where it gets difficult. So easy for that opponent to just open up DRS, throw it down the straight. There's really nothing you can do. What that means is now Andre is the one that will get DRS, just needs to stay as close behind as he can. Of course, you would have seen the Red Bull up the road from him with DRS. If you're wondering why that is, it's because the first DRS zone and the second DRS zone on this track have the same activation point. So if you're behind, when you hit that activation point, make the overtake in the first DRS zone. Well, you get the advantage of DRS in the second DRS zone once you've already made the overtake. It gives you that little bit of a boost, that little bit of an advantage to get away from the car you just overtook. But Andre's done really well to stay with the Red Bull. What is the gap? The gap is 0.5. It might be a little bit too far, but the Red Bull gets out of shape in a big way. I thought he was going to be able to collect it again, maybe just lose a bit of momentum. But I think he was desperate to get on the power. He knew that McLaren was going to open up DRS and put him under pressure. Just desperate to get on the power, and that corner can be so tricky. A lot of drivers do have trust issues with that corner. If you come out of there a little bit too greedy, a little bit too brave on the throttle, it usually goes very badly for you. And that means that Andre is going to be able to hold on to that P6 a little bit longer. Good advantage for the McLaren driver is that he's got no penalties next to his name. That could mean a jump up the field later on in the race. Further down in the field, Pantristar in the one and only Alpine. The other Alpine has retired from the race. That was Skull. Then Virus in the second McLaren. P9 still in the points. The remaining Ferrari, Mr. M. We've got the second Haas, that is Scott. Is that car ghosting? Yes, it is. So Scott, first car outside the points, car is clearly ghosting. Let's have a look at Andres. That car appears to be working, so you should be on the back of Scott pretty soon. But as you can see, Scott no longer in the race. So technically 12 cars on circuit, but we're down to 11 drivers. Of course, this is also the reason why we use the ghost car. It's not only for the lapped cars, it's for the drivers who get disconnected. Remember, that car will stay out on track. The AI will take over control of that car and continue driving around the circuit for the duration of the race. If that car doesn't ghost, it can drive pretty slowly, and it can affect really close battles on track when one of the two cars gets stuck behind it. So that's why we have the ghosting rule. Some people like it, some people don't. But it leads to less controversy in the races. It's the last way you want to lose a race. It's getting stuck behind a car that's not even really there. Driver's no longer in the race. He's probably sitting back watching the race on YouTube, and his car is affecting your battle. That's why we do have the ghosting rule on. And oh, that might just be track limits. Ladmine throwing absolutely everything at it. I think that might be another warning towards his penalty count. Already has a penalty next to his name. I think he had 2 penalties next to his name. It might be... Ooh, he's actually got 3 penalties next to his name. So Ladmine up to 9 seconds, and we just saw him go over that curb not so long ago. I think that was all 4 wheels over the curb, so that's probably another warning. Another 3 seconds is going to take him up to 12, and then it really effectively throws you off the podium, regardless of where you finish. And if we have a second safety car towards the end of things, well, that amount of penalties effectively puts you at the rear of the field. For all the drivers that have managed to get this far without a penalty, it is crucial that they continue. With that example, Weeze, your leader, he doesn't have to worry about any penalties, because not only is he fast, he's kept it clean throughout. Remember, a lot of issues there in turn 1. Went backwards into the grass, he was lucky to escape without damage. Went down to P6 or 7. Was able to work his way through the field, got his way to the front, went in for mediums, and then the safety car came out and put him back in the lead. And since then, he's been unwilling to give it up. The gap 5.8 seconds, getting larger and larger with every lap that passes. Not much Ladmine can do about it. He's good enough, quick enough to stay ahead of Triple. Not quick enough to stay with Wheeze. But look at all these penalties on screen. Places 2, 3 and 4. All of those drivers with penalties. We have 9 seconds for Ladmine in P2 as mentioned earlier. Then 6 seconds for Triple M in P3. 3 seconds for Matt in P4. If those cars finish really close together, they're simply going to swap order. Ladmine with the most, Matt with the least, means Matt would finish in P2 if the checkered flag fell this very moment. But it's not going to. We still have 30 laps to go. If you were with us last night for the SKR race, we did this same thing, short qualifying, same circuit, but the 50% race. The race would have already been over 4 or 5 laps ago. In this scenario, we still have 30 to go. So at this stage, a lot of the drivers would already be back in the living room, sitting on the couch, going, that was a pretty good race, or that was a terrible race, I want to get it out of my mind. This time around, they're still very much out on the race circuit. A little bit twitchy there for the Mercedes. But Wee's doing a fantastic job out front, 6.5 seconds. Hate commentating on these quick guys, 'cause sometimes I critique their driving and halfway through I go, I can't do any better than that, what am I talking about? It's like an elementary school cricket coach critiquing international cricket players. It just doesn't match up. Well, I suppose Julian Palmer is also a commentator, and I suppose I'm fine then. He wasn't very good either. Very, very quiet there in the comment section. Of course, if you're there, let me know. Lots of people laughing. Am I making someone laugh? Good thing I'm making someone laugh. It's a long race, I have to make you laugh. There's not always something to commentate on the circuit. You can see the time gaps there on your timing screen. You'll see there's no real DRS battles on track. This is the only DRS battle on track. Just the one. It's a battle between Top Gun, Mr. Rem and Virus. Everybody else is pretty spread out. That's why in the 100% races you do prefer those occasional safety cars. It just brings the field together. But in this particular one, we don't want any safety cars. That means we probably lost another car. Don't want to finish with anything less than 12. Ladmine picks up another 3-second penalty. That's going to throw him into the double digits. He's not the only man in the double digits. The other one in the double digits is Andre. Rather Andres. Sorry Andre, I probably gave you a heart attack. It's Andres in fact. He's got 16 seconds next to his name. As for the driver I just mentioned, Andre, apologies, he has no penalties next to his name. Where is Wheeze? We look towards Wheeze. He's now in the pits, is he? Yes, he is. He's getting a brand new set of hard tyres. That will definitely take him to the end of the race. This is Top Gun, Virus, Andres. Scott at the rear, but remember that car was ghosting earlier on. It's still ghosting, so he has not been able to get his way back into the lobby at the front of the field. We've got Mr. Rem, Ladmine, Matt. Those top three all have penalties, so we're going to have to wait for the game to decide who finishes where. Spikes in P4. Then you've got Matt. Rather Spikes. Then you've got Pantry Star. I'm reading things upside down for some reason. That's what a long race will do to you. At least for the time being. My voice is still holding together. Don't know what it's going to sound like in the League v League Championship tomorrow night. But if you're met with a Batman type voice, you might find yourself in the unique situation of you're going to watch the stream, but you're probably going to mute me. Triple M out front. 1.8 seconds is the gap. Ladmine P2, Matt P3, Spikes P4, Pantry Star, and then Wheeze. Remember, Wheeze led the race. He had a substantial gap out at the front. He's come in and got a fresh set of hards. That'll take him to the end of the race. A few of the cars up the road from him are definitely going to have to pit, or they're going to be on shreds of rubber at the end of the race. That means the track will come back to Wheeze, so he's in P6 for now, but he's playing the strategic game. He's thinking about the long game. And of course, no penalties. The other driver, no penalties. Andre, same story for Spikes and Pantry Star. And of course the ghost car at the rear has behaved himself and stayed within the lines. Don't think the AI goes quick enough to cut any corners. Everybody is pretty open up. We've got one DRS battle. That's the one you're looking at now. It's between Virus and Top Gun. Everybody else evenly spread amongst the field. We have another DRS battle actually towards the top of the field. That's for P2. There they are. For a second I was confused, but that was Triple M up the road. He's 2.8 seconds ahead of these two. These two are in a battle for P2, but they have two different penalties next to their name. Really don't like it when so many drivers have penalties. I'm not critiquing the driving, I'm just saying from a commentary's perspective, the battles you're seeing on circuit do not necessarily translate to that timing screen, so you might be seeing two drivers battling it out right till the start finish line, and then it comes up on the official results that they were actually 6 seconds apart the whole time. Huge anticlimax. But at least we still get the action of seeing them out on track, even if the battle isn't as real as it seems. Triple M leads the way, Matt P2, then Ladmine, Spikes, then we've got Wheeze. The man who's coming through the field. He was in P6, he's made up his first position, he's got past Pantry Star, now he's going to start chasing down Spikes. Spikes 3 seconds up the road from him, no longer 2.9 seconds up the road from him, so he's already taking little bits of time out of that lead. Once he gets there, gonna have another 4 seconds before he can catch up to the podium positions, but I'm pretty sure those drivers are either going to pit or they're going to have a very hard time in the closing stages of the race. No pit stops there for the top three. Everyone remains out for now. So what does Wheeze know that the others don't? He's obviously gone with something slightly different. At this stage of the race, he's on a new set of hards. Most of the guys he's racing are on much older tyres. There's Triple M, Matt and Spikes on old set hard tyres just ahead of him, and then Ladmine is having a strong race in P3, but just so many penalties next to his name will throw him out of any competitive equation. Another problem for him is he's got 26 laps on his tyres, and they're not hard tyres, they're medium tyres. So he's going to have to come in pretty soon. Those tyres aren't going to last. That's going to throw him towards the rear of the field. While there are gaps in the field, they're relatively small gaps. It's going to come out round about P8, P9, possibly even P10. And then obviously with all those penalties next to his name, it doesn't bode well for the result at the end. Another 3-second penalty, this time going the way of Top Gun. Triple M, another man whose name starts with T, pulls up into the pits. That was your leader. You can see he's already passed Wheeze, so Wheeze has made up a lot of time. Matt now leads the race. Position he probably thought he could have been in a lot earlier on in this race. Showed the pace and potential in qualifying. Race just didn't go as planned, but now finds himself out front with some tyres that probably don't feel too great at this stage. 27 laps already on those tyres. Ladmine just behind him, also 27 laps on a set of mediums. When you put that into perspective, Ladmine a lot quicker at this stage than Matt. He's able to hold on with mediums that should not be in very good condition. I think those mediums have probably passed their expiry date already. I was expecting them to lap round or pit round about 22, 24 laps, 27 laps on those tyres. Surely he's not trying to stretch for a set of softs. Now we've got, this is a battle for the lead, so Ladmine's not worried too much about tyre management and making them last to the end, because he's going to go to the front of the field. Spikes, Wheeze, Pantry Star, Andre, Triple M, Virus, Matt. Remember this order I'm reading to you. Unfortunately, really means nothing. You're going to have to wait until the official results. There's a handful of penalties and they're all very, very different penalties. Going through them real quick. Ladmine, the leader, 12 seconds worth of penalties next to his name. That would effectively put him down in almost, where is that? 12 seconds. That would put him down as far as P5. So that would be really cruel, losing a race that way. Of course, he does have to make a pit stop. He's not going to be able to take those mediums all the way to the end, so he's not going to lose the race purely because of the pit stops. But how he would love the safety car. He's not going to get the safety car. Ladmine eventually peels off to the right, makes his pit stop that it almost seems like he was avoiding at all costs. Comes back out of the pits. I said he'd probably be around P5. It's a little lower than that. And now a whole handful of cars go by. I thought he was going to get out in P6 or 7, and then just as he came back out of the pits, the track came into view and he saw 3 cars fly by. So now Matt, Virus, Top Gun all past. Ladmine now in P9. A lot lower than what I expected him to be. And with those additional 12 seconds worth of penalties, none of which can be served in the pit stop, so all of them will be added on at the end of the race. Of course, Andres, the other high penalty sitter, that's 16 seconds, but 10 of those seconds will be served in a pit stop. Ladmine picks up another 3. Now have a battle between Top Gun and Ladmine for the most penalties. Of course, Top Gun 12 seconds, Ladmine 15, and Andres 16, but that's with the inclusion of a pit penalty that he can get rid of. (52 of 71). Long way to go. Drivers are going to start looking up towards the top left of their screen, just checking on that lap time, lap after lap. Got to try and keep your eyes away from that screen. Just concentrate on the corners, concentrate on the laps. Once you start looking up at the lap counter, just notice how slowly it's ticking up. Just makes everything feel so much longer. The 50% races fly by, obviously because they're half the distance of this, but also gaps aren't so easily formed. So you find a lot more battles out on track. Those drivers who find themselves in a battle for the entirety of the race, trust me, the race flies by. Tonight will be a very different experience. Bit of an endurance for everybody. A little bit of a stretch from what you're used to. Andres picks up another 3-second time penalty. Penalties popping up everywhere for everybody, and this could just be a little bit of the tired slipping in, sinking in. This is already past the distance most drivers will have done. Remember, that's about 56 laps around this circuit for a 50% race. So everyone now going almost 20 laps beyond what they would be used to. So you could see the penalties just racking up. And of course, the more penalties you get, the more penalties you're bound to get, because you start driving a little bit annoyed. Go, communication. Flashes there on the left hand side, but luckily the stream is still up, so everything appears to be fine. Internet's just giving me a bit of a fright. Wheeze leads the way, Spikes P2, Pantry Star P3. What a race by Wheeze. Remember, so quick in qualifying. In turn 1 everything went wrong. For a lot of drivers, they'll drop their head in that moment. Maybe get a little bit too aggressive on the recovery drive, get even more damage. Everything turns into a snowball effect and the race really goes south really quickly. Reese didn't do that. Put it straight out of his mind. The only thing that should be in his mind, where is your next braking point? Where is your next apex? And then repeat those steps over and over again. That's exactly what he did. Forgot what happened at turn 1, got on with it, and now he finds himself back at the front of the race. Remember, he built up an initial lead and then the safety car came out to cancel it, so he could have potentially been even further up the road. Fantastic race by the Mercedes driver. Flying the Mercedes flag because the other Mercedes is missing here tonight. So they needed a good result from one of their OD car. Both RBs currently in the points. So we have no Salvers on the grid this evening. Few teams just not represented, just the 14 drivers. Of course, we have become accustomed to seeing full lobbies here at SAFRL. This is just something we've seen more than once in the 100% distance. All of a sudden the excuses come in, and even some of the quickest drivers run away from this distance. Of course, that was a experiment that seems like it's going to go away. Remainder of the races this season will be normal format, short quali, 50% races. We bring up that calendar for you real quickly. That's where we are right now, round 8 in Mexico, 28th of October next week. Follow the F1 calendar again. We go to Interlagos. Then we're going to have those 2 mystery races for round 10 and 11. Then we finish off the season, Las Vegas, Losail, and Yas Marina. Now I can't get the calendar to go away. There we go. Calendar's gone. Good stuff. Weeze leads the way, 8.9 seconds, and before I can finish what I'm saying, it's 9.1 seconds. So Weeze putting in the time, lap after lap after lap, not giving up, not letting up, not easing up. That's three ways of saying the same thing. Weeze leads from Spikes, leads from Pantry Star. That's your top three. Pantry Star is going to have to do a lot more work before he can confirm that P3. He's got drivers behind him looking to get past. The fortunate thing he does have on his side is all those drivers behind him have lots and lots of penalties. So if these three are able to keep things clean, stay out of damage, could potentially be your top three. But now Triple M, he's got the superior grip, Matt's got the superior grip, they're on fresher mediums, and Pantry Star suddenly down to P5. That's how quick it can happen. You lose one position, you lose another position. Sometimes you just get all out of shape losing that first position. You try and avoid the car, you try and give him space. The second car sees an advantage, and while you're trying to come to terms with having just lost a position, you realize you've just lost two. Not a good feeling. Further down, the two McLarens earlier on in the race, they were in very different parts of the timesheet. Now they're line astern, P7, P8. The second of those McLarens does have a penalty next to his name. Keep on saying a penalty, it might be several, we don't know. In fact, Virus does just have a solitary penalty, so just the 3 seconds. Remember, 15 for Ladmine, Top Gun also up to 15, and now Andres up to 9. So lots of penalties out on circuit. Some drivers keeping it clean, but the drivers who have joined the penalties column, they've added multiple penalties to that column. The AI of Scott still having a solid race at the back, no penalties for him. .2 seconds now is the gap. I really need a new mic. This thing keeps on going off by itself. Great stuff. Talking a bunch of rubbish, then I realize I'm not talking to anyone. I'm already kind of talking to myself, but when the mic switches off, it makes it real. We have our second safety car. I said we might get a second safety car and it might come in the closing stages of the race, and it's happened. We've had a late safety car. It's not as late as we could have had it. We could have had it in the latter stages of the 60s, 65, 66. It's come a little bit earlier than that, lap 58. But this will mix things up. If the drivers have fresh softs available to them, how many of them will come into the pits, put on those softs and make a sprint out of this race right at the end? Gonna have to worry too much about time management, or is it a little bit too far for that soft compound? Surely the soft tires can do 12 or 13 laps. I think that Red Bull just didn't know whether he wanted to come into the pits or not. Cross the pit lane. Well, seems like Triple M did come into the pits at the end of the day. Weeze. Where is Weeze? There we go. Weeze out front, soft set of tires. He chose not to make a pit stop. Did he? He has fresh softs. It's the man in P2 that chose not to make a pit stop, Matt. He's got some penalties next to his name. He's got tires that are aging, relatively new, but aging when compared to the tires around him. It's going to be a difficult situation for him, at least in the early stages. He's going to have some guys with brand new soft tires. They're just going to have so much grip. But if you've got already a little bit of age on those mediums. They're not brand new mediums. You're going to have a difficult time staying with the soft runners. Of course, there is heavy tire degradation around those circuits, so those softs will reach their peak, but they won't be there for very long, and then they'll start going downhill again. The track will come to the medium runners. We've got Spikes on a brand new set of mediums, Triple M on a brand new set of softs, Pantry Star 3 laps on those mediums, Lad Mine brand new softs with lots of penalties. Got Andre in P7, no penalties next to his name. The checkered flag dropped this very moment. He'd finish in P3. Final stint of the race. It's going to be so important. It's what a safety car can do. Looks like the race was going one way. Looked like we could start to predict the podium. Things were starting to take shape. Then a safety car comes out, throws everything out. Half the field have penalties, and multiple penalties at that. A lot of those drivers aren't going to be able to open up sufficient gaps to cancel out their penalties, which means they're going to fall down the order. Lap 60 of 71, we're under safety car. It's the second safety car of the race. First one happened in the early stages. Second one happening pretty late and effectively destroying the race for anyone with penalties next to their name. I believe there were two drivers with 15 seconds next to their name. That effectively puts you at the rear of this field. Could find yourself in a situation where you find yourself behind the ghost car of Scott. F1, it's all about pace. More like qualifying is all about pace. The race is all about keeping it together over a distance. Might be a lot quicker than the rest of the field, but if you're adding 15 seconds to your penalties column, all that extra work, all that extra pace, you've given most of it right back. A lot of weaving going on, drivers trying to keep temperature in the tires, temperature in the brakes. Want to make sure that car is in optimal position when the restart happens so that they can approach turn 1. But do you need turn 1 here at Mexico? Because of how much of a braking point it is. Of course, a very long straight leading up to that corner. Guys want to get as late on the brakes as possible. Sometimes a little too late on the brakes, meaning the brakes don't have enough time to do their job. That's what happened when we saw the start of the race. We saw a couple of cars going backwards, facing directions they didn't want to face. When we had the restart after the first safety car, everything was clean through turns 1, 2 and 3. Hopefully the drivers can repeat the feat. See a few viewers have joined. That might just be one or two of the drivers that have retired from the race. If it is one of you, let me know in the comment section what happened. Safety car will come into the pits. I will be back with you in just a minute. Apologies. I'm going to try and get Andre back in this lobby. There we go. We're back to the racing, and hopefully we get Andre back in the car as soon as possible. Where has Andre gone? He's at the rear of the field. That'll hurt. Of course, the race was looking pretty strong earlier on. Still doesn't have any penalties next to his name, so he's going to be able to recover some of those positions even without making any overtakes. Weeze is out front. Matt is still within DRS, but he's not too worried about winning this race. He knows the amount of penalties he's got next to his name. Of course, as for the other drivers, they don't know. They basically see what we see on screen right now. I can do this, and it tells you how many penalties the drivers have. But for the drivers, that's all they see. They know their opponent's got a penalty. It could be 3 seconds, it could be 15. You really don't know. Ladmine, one of the newer names. Very, very quick driver. Just needs to stay within those white lines. Race could have gone very different for him. Of course, he even briefly led the race. We have Top Gun. Car appeared very light there for a moment. Thought it was another ghosting car. Mr. M, P8, Virus, P9. This is Andre. Is he back in control of the McLaren? Appears to be the case. Here's Scott. At the rear of the field, still the ghost car. It's Weeze versus Matt. Half a second is the gap. Matt's got the tyre advantage, but he's got a lot of penalties. So we might still get a bit of a battle on circuit, but it's not going to be a battle for the timesheets. Ooh, they get very close. They don't want to make contact in that corner again, so I think Matt just thought better of it. Got on the brakes at the last moment, saw a bit of a lock-up, but they avoid damage, and now that's an aggressive overtake. Goes to the outside. He's not going to be able to make it stick, is he? No, he's not. Gets the door shut in his face by the Mercedes. Thought about going back towards the inside line, and the Mercedes said, no, I know exactly what you're doing, and I'm not going to let you do it. Not now. Shuts the door, and Matt's going to have to find another way around. Thank you to Death Queen. Of course, remember, everyone watching, remember to like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. Getting pretty close, but we need a few more. Of course, if you've already subscribed, leave a like on the video. It's been a long night. Weeze leads from Matt, Triple M, Spikes, Ladmine, Pantry Star, Mr. M, Top Gun, Andre, Virus and Scott. That is your order, but that will probably not be your order at the end of the race. Remember, a lot of penalties still need to be applied to those timesheets. Weeze, then Matt, then Spikes. Of course, if you've got the video in full screen and you don't want to leave full screen to subscribe to the channel, you can just hit the NFR logo on the bottom right of your screen. That's a subscribe button. Don't want you missing any of the action in a small screen mode. Weeze leads the way from Matt. Got 4/10 of a second. So close together. What a battle this would be with 5 laps to go in the race. The two competitors that took each other on in qualifying so close together, but we know it's not a real battle. For this man, it is a very real battle. He knows he's not going to win it with the penalties, but he wants to win it on the race circuit. It's all about the pride. But for now, he's going to have to swallow his pride stay behind the Mercedes, and now he's coming under attack. The RB inserting himself into this battle. There was a battle for 2, now it's a battle of 3, and soon it's going to be a battle of 4 and even 5. Look at that, the top 5 so close together. We've got Wheeze, Matt, Triple M, Spikes, Ladmine, all separated by less than a second, the top 5. That's as close as you're going to see it. I think these 100% races have in fact helped my voice. I think this is as far as I've gotten in 100% without having to clear the throat. So definitely improvements. Wheeze, Matt, Triple M, Ladmine, Spikes. He was a little higher up. In fact, he was challenging for podium. He's now in P5. So he's gone backwards. Then we've got Pantry Star, Mr. Rem, Top Gun, Andre Virus. Seems like Spike's just running out of road. That might have been the case. He's in P5. Wants to get himself back on the podium. Could all come down to the penalties and who's got the most of them. At the moment, if the checkered flag fell right now, Spikes would be in P3. Of course, Top Gun would finish in P10. Things ended now. Ladmine would finish P9. Really harsh penalties handed out. And this is a circuit that it's just so easy. So easy to go over that limit. So easy to go over that line. JPR also had their race here on Friday night. Also a race with quite a few penalties handed out. SKR had their go last night. Doing it for the third and final time. Of course, tomorrow night we do the League v League. That is going to be at a different venue. I'd love to tell you the venue, I just don't know. Very bad commentary. Maybe it will come to me. Hopefully, it'll come to me. Otherwise, I'm just going to sound like an idiot. Of course, tomorrow for League v League, we're going to Singapore. Very different circuit, thank you Skull. I was actually checking the calendar, all I needed to do was check the comment section. So we're going to Singapore tomorrow night, very different race circuit from what you got here in Mexico. Obviously a night race, a street circuit. First night race we ever had on the F1 calendar. Of course for a while it was the only, because the others were still started before sunset and then ended at night. Made Singapore quite unique because it was at night from start to finish. Since then we've added a few more of those races, namely Las Vegas. Of course Singapore no longer has the famous Singapore Sling. What a corner that was. And if you're not old enough to remember, go on F1 TV, go into their archive, and go have a look at the first 1 or 2 iterations of the Singapore Grand Prix. You're going to find something called the Singapore Sling. It's a corner you had to absolutely commit to, even though you had no idea where the apex was. You couldn't see the apex. You just had to have faith and trust yourself. Fantastic helicopter shots we're getting now of the top 6 drivers. They've broken away from the rest of the field, but these top 6 have stayed within DRS of each other. It's just really going to hurt the 4 in the middle with the penalties. That means that Spikes, does Spikes have a penalty? Yes he does. Pantry Star has no penalties. Means Pantry Star could potentially take P2 in this race from P5 on the circuit. We've got all sorts of action on the circuit, but it's not what's happening in the timesheets. We've got a horse going sideways. Who was that? It was Matt. Matt looking to take those medium tyres all the way. He's actually taken up a few places again. He's going side by side. Nothing is decided. So difficult to call. But you know, most of these battles are really going to count for nothing at the end of it. As for Wheeze, he's out front by a second. He'll be happy to have that mess behind him. Doesn't want them anywhere near him. Doesn't want anyone out breaking themselves, running into him in the closing stages. Stay out front, keep the nose clean, stay out of the penalties column. Not long to go. It's been a real marathon tonight. It's been a real push of all of these drivers' endurance. Of course, it's a Monday night. Everyone's in a bad mood on a Monday. Come the end of the night, get a really long race in Mexico. Pushing all of these drivers a little harder. Andre still in P9, still no penalties next to his name. Wheeze, no penalties. Pantry Star, no penalties. Mr. Rem, no penalties. The rest of the field have at least one, and in some cases, 5. Correct that, 6. Top Gun now up to 6 penalties. That'll give him 18 seconds worth. And a retirement, a caution. Too late in the race to have any effect on a safety car. It's lap 71 of 71, but Triple M becomes the 4th DNF. Remember, Scott is ghosting, so it's only going to be the 9 finishers. And look at this, with a corner to go, the gap is 2.5. 2.5 tenths rather, I almost said 2.5 seconds, 2.5 tenths over the line. Pantry Star does in fact get promoted to P2 as a result of those penalties, and Spikes gets promoted to P3 as a result of those penalties. We're now going to await those official results. It's been a long night. Anytime those official results want to come up, they can. Of course, I think the game working hard on the mathematics of all those penalties, trying to figure out who's supposed to finish where. Still have a bit of a pause. Hopefully they'll come up so I can read them to you one more time. And there we go. Get a brief look at the podium, and let's get through these results. Wheeze takes the victory, started in pole, finished in P1, but it wasn't as simple as that. There was a lot of drama in between. Pantry Star finishes P2 because he stayed out of the penalties. Spikes finishes P3 because he only picked up the 1 penalty. Then Mr. M P4, Matt P5, real up and down race for him. Andre strong finish in P6. Then Ladmine P7, could have been so much better. Top Gun P8, Virus P9, and Triple M makes up the top 10 as well as the field. In fact, Triple M was a DNF, but he's still registered as a race finisher because that happened so late in the race. And as we were talking at the end there, I just noticed that the rain had come back. It's been a long, long night tonight, folks, and I have to say thank you. I have to say thank you to everyone who's watching, because for the most part, you guys have stayed here throughout. had pretty much the same viewership since the start of the stream till the end of the stream, which means you guys are enjoying the racing, you're staying throughout, you're not just coming to watch 1 or 2 laps and leaving. So I have to thank all of you at home that have been watching the races, that have been supporting the channel 3 nights a week. I see the same names here all the time. Of course, we had Mexico last night. We had a double dose of Mexico tonight. And tomorrow we head to Singapore for a very different challenge, very different race circuit, very different championship. Of course, no drivers' championship involved tomorrow night. It's all about the teams. It's all about the individual leagues. And we'll be back tomorrow night for that. So before I go, one more time, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We're trying to get to 500. And if you've subscribed already, thank you very much. Leave a like on the video. And hopefully, I'll see you all tomorrow. Until then, cheers.
Round the track like a shooting star. Feel the rush. NFR. Lap by lap. Watch them spin. Victory's close. Who will win? In our heads, the engine's din. NFR, let's begin. NFR, lights are green. Zooming fast, slick machine. Every twist, every scene. Catch the action on your screen. NFR, yeah. NFR, yeah. Drama high, stars afar. Round the track like a shooting star. Feel the rush. NFR. Lap by lap, watch them spin. Victory's close. Who will win? In our heads, the engine's din. NFR, let's begin. Monday night, feel the vibe. SAFRL, alive, alive. Engines roar, crowds inside. 8 p.m. electric light. On the edge, they race so fast. Speeding by, won't let it pass. Highs and lows, a roller coaster. Drama here, we're getting closer. Feel the speed, feel
the thrill. Crashes